How do
This is Winging It, the somewhat whimsical, certainly whirring, decidedly wonky, seldom weighty, endlessly well-intentioned, and wildly witty show about music where one knows what's coming and the other doesn't. It happens in between both proper to ensure you can spend anywhere from 15 to, I'm going to say, I don't know, about 90-ish minutes with us every week. So, the moment you've been waiting for. Not very long. You haven't been waiting that long, but you've been waiting. At least what? Like
seems like eternity.
3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So what we're going to be talking about are mega hit songs that nearly didn't see the light of day.
Wow.
So they're mega hits. Whether or not you and I like them, they're still mega hits, so it is what it is. So,
all right, it's a stretch to call that edifying, but it'll certainly be interesting, and that's enough.
It's going to be educational as fuck.
Yeah.
So this comes to us from listverse.com. We've used them many times. We love them. So here is how this particular article, anyway, begins. What artists and musicians assume will be well received by the public doesn't always prove to be popular. Conversely, what singers and songwriters hate about their musical output sometimes turn out to be a massive success, right? We know that the public is fickle, as it mentions, and now more than ever, the recording industry is obviously different. It's changed. Some songs get a life of their own. They rocket up the charts and find lasting success despite everybody involved thinking the tracks would be forgotten, discarded, or dismissed. So, the first one that almost didn't make it and still remains a huge hit for this band is Creep by Radiohead. Radiohead's biggest hit, Creep, was written by frontman Tom York when he was 19 and studying English and fine arts at college. At the time, he was feeling a little stressed and very isolated, and he let it out on paper. Now, when it came time for them to record their album, Pablo Honey, which would go on to be released in 1993, the song wasn't even considered edgy enough for the band's look and style. Even more, the band didn't like the song. Guitarist Johnny Greenwood tried to sabotage it by offering up a pre-chorus riff that he thought made the song sound bad. However, college radio stations absolutely adored the song, and obviously it crept up the charts. So they have said many times that they're tired of performing the song at concerts, but it's still a mainstay. Despite the band itself trying to sabotage it, it is and has and continues to achieve worldwide fame. So that song almost didn't see the light of day, which is really weird because it kind of put Radiohead on the map, even though they didn't like it. But again, college kids were like, hell yeah, that's our jam. So that's one of them, which I think is very strange. I can't imagine that not being on the radio because it was kind of the thing that I heard first, the thing most of us heard first when it came to Radiohead. Now they've changed a lot since then, but it was the first one. So, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah,
almost didn't.
I think it's a shame there's anything by Radiohead on the radio at all. But by the way, if you're expecting participation from me and I do not deliver and you remain unsatisfied, I will say you should blame yourself because you're a victim of your own success. I said hey, maybe bring the sign that hangs next to us when we record every show, the new one, so I can replace it. And she brought this magnificent work of art, and it is so alluring that I will probably stumble and fumble through any attempt to answer subjects or to speak on subjects. So anyway, but
perhaps we should remove the sign then.
Okay,
all right.
I'll give it a shot. Anyway, was it Radiohead, Creep, and I know, and one of the banes of modern existence is social media, and every single time you display bad judgment in reading a post on Instagram about Radiohead, you'll be bombarded with fans saying, it really sucks that this song represents them because it's like their least cool song, man. And I know, they hate it, the bands, everybody hates it. I don't know how it's a hit, but I'm not a huge fan of theirs, let's say, but I know that doesn't represent them. And
so I just want to say, in response to what you just said, the fans don't hate it. The fans actually love it. We all love that song. So even now, all these years later, I love that song, and I'm sorry they hate it. But at the time, obviously, it was something he was feeling, and it spoke to other people. So it's a very powerful song. It's a simple song, and it's not something that they would typically do now because they're far more complex. But I love it, and the fans love it, which is why they have to keep playing it. So your statement is actually incorrect. The fans do love it.
Well, I always seem to stumble across those who swear that they're being it's a misrepresentation by putting that weak song out when all this stuff is so much better.
Yeah, they are definitely a lot more evolved than that, but you all have to start somewhere. So I think it's a great place to start.
I don't hold it against them. I mean, people say, "Oh, you resent your own success." I mean, it would be a little bit frustrating if, like, for me, if I ever had a success and it was some weak song, and I say, "Oh, you're ignoring all my other masterpieces." So yeah, I kind of understand.
Yeah, I think it's just the first one, and the first one, years later you look back and you're like, not my favorite, but apparently they didn't like it from the outset. But whatever. It is the song that really kind of put them on the map for lots of people. Certainly did for me. So the next one is Prince's Kiss. In the summer of 1985, Prince was busily working on the album Parade at Sunset Sound Studios in Los Angeles. Also, at the time, he was in a band called Maserati, which had been formed by Prince's bassist Brown Mark. During their recording session, he asked if he had an extra song that he could record for the album. So immediately he wrote and performed a 1-minute quick version of Kiss and recorded it with a cheap tape recorder lying around the studio. I would like to hear that one. So anyway, he developed a funk groove over it in the next few hours. It's the Kiss we know today, but Prince heard the song. He was mad when he heard it, actually. He wanted to take it back right there and then, so that's what he did. He promised Mark a song writing credit, and the deal was sealed. So, apparently, obviously, it reached the top spot, but almost did not happen. It was kind of just a last-minute thing, and Prince didn't even like it, and here it is, though. To me, it's like this hypnotic, amazing song in a falsetto none of us can do.
There are certain songs artists do and they don't like them, and you can't imagine what they're thinking. I mean, and this is one, honestly, you gotta love this song, and he must have come to love. Come on, sometimes I don't understand why artists don't like great songs that they do, like this one.
He came to like it. He just didn't like what Brown had done with it. So then he kind of took it back, did the Prince thing, Princified it, and then it was released.
Oh, nice. Yeah, because it's kind of hard not to like the way it is now. The song is hot.
But it almost didn't happen.
And it's also educational. I mean, it's edifying because...
Talks about kissing.
Well, no, you walk away knowing that you don't have to watch Dynasty to have an attitude. And that I think that's useful.
And that's certainly something, words to live by. I'd imagine you don't have to watch Falcon Crest either, which is good. So I appreciate that.
Probably Prince's most used quote.
Probably. So that would be a real tragedy for me. So I don't know. Very interesting. The other one, you're going to be surprised. Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit almost did not happen. Nirvana completely pushed grunge into the mainstream with Smells Like Teen Spirit, but frontman Kurt Cobain was so unimpressed with the song in the end that he didn't even want to release it. So at the time the band was recording music for the album that would catapult them to fame, Cobain was listening to a lot of the Pixies. Yeah, you can tell. He was listening to so much of it, in fact, that he wanted to create a song that sounded like the Pixies just to see if Nirvana could come up with a pop music-like arrangement. And that's exactly what happened. But by the time they recorded the song, Cobain was already over it. And he wanted to trash it before it reached the world. So it was basically, he says, I was basically trying to rip off the Pixies. I have to admit it. And I get it. He kind of did, but again, went a different way. Clearly, that worked for Nirvana in the end, but it didn't work for Cobain, who hated fame and popularity, and obviously it came with a very steep price for him.
And it's one of those songs that you hear, it's the first thing you hear by a band, and you say, okay, you know they're going somewhere or they've got something special, because this is a lot of people's first Nirvana song because the first one was mainstream. Well, hey, sometimes it's like that, though. I'm glad it happened how it happened because we love the song. And
I mean, it would have been it changed music at that time. I mean, it was revolutionary.
I think so,
I mean,
for those who were able to be influenced,
I don't necessarily agree with it, but it did. I mean, I have to, it's there. I saw it happen. I watched it happen. Everybody just fell in love with Nirvana and they worshiped Nirvana, and it was again, the second coming of Christ when Nirvana came out, and I didn't understand it, but clearly it was what the world needed and we didn't know. I just think it's kind of weird to think of how different it would be without it. Super weird without it.
I never leave the tar
there
altogether, but I listen to new whippersnappers like this Cobain kid.
The next one is the Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams Are Made of This almost didn't make it. Annie Lennox and Dave Stewart had fallen on remarkably tough times before their fame. The pair had gone on an Australian tour in the early 80s with a prior band, The Tourists, only for the group to break up in a cheap motel. So when they returned to United Kingdom, they were content to play music together even if the romance was dead. They only played small gigs to small crowds. Eventually, though, their luck started to change. So Annie recognized the potential of this song immediately and rushed over to help, Dave hammer out the song, and voila, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This was born. So just one problem, though. The record company executives hated it.
No.
Yeah, the song had no traditional chorus like what listeners were used to, so no record execs felt like a release would largely, have been panned. So undeterred, they shopped it, and a radio DJ in Ohio played it, and there it was.
Right.
So I cannot imagine this song not being out. I love this song. This is, quintessential Eurythmics. I mean, can you imagine this song never having come out? It was so close.
And how many of these iconic, world-shaking, transformative songs have one DJ or something behind them?
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? Nobody likes this, but I'm going to play this on my show. And we wouldn't have acts like Roxette, hello, so I hear, And here's another story that I did not know. So, see? Educational, edifying.
And, the other one that's very interesting is Michael Jackson's Billie Jean almost didn't make it, which is super weird. So it says Michael Jackson knew that it was going to be a hit as soon as he wrote it. The only problem is his producer wasn't so sure. So Quincy Jones was not in. He thought it was lacking something. He didn't like the song's bass line. He hated the song's title and was worried that fans would think it was about Billie Jean King, which I can see. I can totally see that. But Michael Jackson persisted. And so even Jones tried to compromise with Michael and saying, maybe call it Not My Lover. But he was like, no, still not going to do that. So, of course, we know things ended up for Billie Jean. This story goes to show that sometimes even legendary and incredibly talented producers don't always have their finger on the pulse. So, it's interesting because, Quincy Jones, obviously, a monster, in music. But to write something and have your producer go, it's lacking, I don't think so. And for you to go, no, I know this has something. Because, if your producer says it, I would tend to think you'd probably turn away from it and think, okay, well, they know what's best for me. But he didn't.
No, he did not. And Michael Jackson also had to fight not just for the song, but for the length of the intro. And because, as he put it, Quincy Jones thought he was wrong. He was wrong in a couple of cases. He thought that it was too long. And Jack said, no, that's the jelly. And it is. Nobody gets bored during the buildup of Billie Jean. I don't care how long it lasts. Once that bass hits you, and forget about it. And the keyboards, you'll sit there and listen while it just plays on. And we're not looking for the verse to start just yet. So it's rocking you long before that. And he was wrong. However, Quincy Jones did insist on the strings being added to Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, and he was dead right, because that is the hook, as soon as it starts. So he was right then, but totally wrong about Billie Jean. Yeah.
Right, but I that's the scary part is these songs almost didn't happen.
Yeah.
And Billie Jean, obviously, groundbreaking for Michael Jackson. The video, everything, the performance of it, at the Apollo, every single thing, all of this stuff, I just can't imagine it. So some of these songs are so important to culture, pop culture, and music. So it's kind of scary to hear these stories.
It was especially that one. Remember, I was at an open mic where nobody played any instruments. It was all plastic, phony plastic beat rap. I stood up there to do a song with a bass. I played the riff to Billie Jean, and everybody went crazy. Why? Because it's universal. Everybody is hooked on that song. It's that legendary.
Well, I'm glad that it came out, because it definitely could have been something that ended up on the cutting room floor, like Metallica's Nothing Else Matters. That's another one that almost didn't make it.
For shame.
Metallica rocketed to fame, obviously, when they released their self-titled hit album, which was also known as the Black Album in 1991. So good. I can't even tell you. I love it. But They'd been touring before that. In fact, it was a 1990 tour that prompted frontman James Hetfield to write one song in particular that appeared on the 1991 album, and that was Nothing Else Matters. It was about the band going on the road and Hetfield, very badly missing home and his girlfriend at the time. So he penned the ballad on the tour bus, but he had low hopes for it. He felt like a hard rock band couldn't go and release a sappy love song, right? So completely wrong thinking though. So despite the misgivings, he played the song for the drummer and they ended up putting it on the Black album. But I guess Hetfield was extremely hesitant for a while, and he tried to convince Ulrich and the other guys that maybe it wasn't right. So it's his song. He pitches it. They're in. He's like, wait a minute, maybe this is a bad idea. But the others wouldn't hear of it. They were totally in, and then it was released. So again, there's all those false starts, right? I wrote this song. There's no way our band would do this. Hey guys, what do you think? Hell yeah, we'll do this. Wait, maybe we shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, that almost didn't happen. And I think that's another absolutely great song.
It's such an absolute classic that we probably have seen the video clips recently. Elton John saying it's simply one of the greatest songs ever written. It's so, the melody is deadly. I've heard it played on any number of instruments, Celtic harps. I've heard it in so many different fashions, but it is a stirring song because the melody and the lyric is so great. And the whole thought of releasing such a thing when all you had done is thrash, thrash, thrash all that time,
right.
I think that's another curse of modern life is you're on social media and everybody's saying Metallica sucked ever since the Black album. I'm like, please, folks, it was the best shit they ever did, I think, or at least close. But it's right there in the song. Open mind for a different view. Why do we have to be that Metallica? Why don't we do? And some of their best stuff has been just that, like Hero of the Day, and their ballads are priceless. They used to do them, but they were part of these big proggy doomy things and stuff. But this is just stirring in a new way. They were doing a new thing, and we've seen it on future albums and everything. And it's glad he stuck to his guns on this one. He didn't doubt himself.
He did, but then he didn't.
I'm glad the band was supportive and said, no, dude, you've got it. You were right the first time.
Well, I think there's always that fear of being pigeonholed as a band. You can't evolve past this. I have to always sound this way. I always have to do this. And there's also a danger in if you weren't a traditional band, like hard rock band, and you were experimental, I always think of One, right, that has like all these movements and it does all of these amazing things. If you were that band, you can't be this band, and that doesn't make sense to me. And obviously Metallica's continue to evolve and do whatever in the fuck they want, and they should. They're brilliant. But Metallica got pigeonholed and we can't do ballads. As obviously Hetfield said to himself, we shouldn't be doing ballads. Absolutely you should. That's ballads are the shit. Yeah. So, but I understand his misgivings, but I'm glad the band said, no, we're doing this. And they've continued to stick to their guns, and they should, because that's what they do. And this next one's going to probably surprise you. It's the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction. Wow. Now, I'm just going to tell you, if I never hear this song again, it'll be too soon. I've heard it hundreds of times in my life, and I'm all set, but I get that it was a good song. It is a good song. The Rolling Stones' I Can't Get No Satisfaction was nearly never released, but a vote among the band members finally convinced Keith Richards that it had to be a single. And as the story goes, Keith Richards woke up in the middle of the night one evening with a simple 8-note riff rolling around in his head. He sat up and reached for a guitar, flipped on the cassette tape to record the sound, and played the notes before going back to bed. The next day, he played the recording for his bandmates, along with more than a half hour of his snoring, apparently. So he thought it was a weak riff. Richard said it's a weak riff. Maybe something they could use as an album filler track, but the rest of the band heard something he hadn't. It's simple brilliance and immediately pressured him into making it a single. They did, and obviously it's one of their biggest hits. And when you think of the band that, does Satisfaction, not that they don't do other things, but that's the big, if you don't know the Rolling Stones, Satisfaction. Yeah. So it's weird to think that was never done. I mean, if you think about how big that was on MTV and everything, that video, I mean, I can see him right now in his little purple leotard situation, strutting around.
You can't conceive of anybody anywhere who doesn't know the song.
No.
They couldn't tell you much about it, maybe, but they've heard it. They have heard it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good song. I mean, I'm tired of it, but I think it's a good song.
Oh, I absolutely love 60s Stones once they started doing originals. I'm not all that crazy about all the old R&B covers. They're good, but I like the originals like Satisfaction, like Mother's Little Helper, like 1,000 other songs.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it'd be weird to think of the world without that song, although I can imagine one. I'm okay with it, but it definitely is one of their biggest hits, and they're certainly known for that song as well. So, and millions of others, obviously. They have so many great songs and many...
The band called it. They really did,
They did. I mean, just like they did with Metallica.
Well, there are a lot of stories like that. I bet there's one. I won't even say it because you might be getting to it. There is another similar rock story about the composer himself is the one who doubted, like Hetfield, like Richards with the riff.
I'm only going to do one more.
Okay.
And this one is one that I've heard way too many times, but for whatever reason, I heard it when I was a kid, so it sticks with me, and it's one that I'm willing to hear, but normally only about halfway through, and that's Jack and Diane by John Mellencamp, and this almost didn't see the light of day, I guess. John Mellencamp may have landed at the top spot of the American charts for 4 weeks in 1982 with Jack and Diane, but the song shouldn't have been there at all. And if Mellencamp had stuck to his guns, it would have never made it out of the recording studio. Originally, the line was that Jack was not a football star. Jack was an African American. Mellencamp revealed during an interview with the Huffington Post in 2014. In 1982, when I turned the song into the record company, they went, "Whoa, you can't make him something other than that." Mellencamp balked at the request, said, "Well, I don't really want to. I mean, that's the whole point. This is really a song about race relationships and a white girl being with a black guy, and that's what the song's about." And they said, "Oh, no, we can't do that," at that time. So the record company, they thought that it would be too scandalous at the time, which is really sad, but this is what was going on. In early 1980s, turned the song into a little ditty about a football star, and the public loved it. But it almost didn't make it because obviously he didn't want it to be that. He wanted to make a statement. He's a statement guy. That's what he does. He makes statements, but apparently the record company said, "Not now. This is too soon." So it is a little ditty about Jack and Diane, a football star. That whole thing made so much sense. It just sounded like, that's what he meant to say. I mean, you would never have guessed if you didn't hear the story behind it. Yeah.
But it's probably a good song 80 million listens ago. It's one of those songs. And there are songs that don't hit me like that I don't get tired of, even though they're played everywhere every day. This is one, however. Get a little tired of it. If it were album filler, if it were just on the album someplace and you listen to the record and there it was, you wouldn't mind it at all. But the fact that it dominates so much,
Yeah, it was a Skate World song. I skated to that song.
Oh.
It was definitely one of those songs that I, was around all my childhood. I heard it all the time. We sang it all the time. So I don't hear it a lot, but when it does come on, I usually let it stay on about 1 minute and then I get out of there because I've heard it a million times.
I'm at the point where I'm just about ready to say it sucks on a chili dog,
Outside of Tasty Freeze, even.
Outside of Tasty Freeze now.
So that's it for the songs that almost didn't see the light of day for a variety of reasons. And I think, again, this particular group of songs, I think that there is a lot of impact on pop culture. And I think if they weren't there, I can't imagine what things would have looked like or how things would have progressed or, what the next big thing would be or what Mellencamp would have done instead. So it's really interesting to think about these, but I'm surprised they almost didn't make it because they seem like complete hit material to me from second one that I heard it. But apparently not everyone was convinced.
Yeah, and there are Pinball Wizard is another example I thought was going to be on. It's probably on some list somewhere because everybody believed it was a hit except the composer himself, Pete Townsend. And like many of the songs here, it was the person who wrote it who doubted it the most. And we've probably all been there, haven't we, songwriters? And there's always that one that you love and you expect absolutely nobody else to, and sometimes they don't. But I'm glad all of these songs are significant, and I'm glad all of them ended up seeing the light of day.
Yeah, they were mega hits.
They were mega hits. They were. These songs are certainly significant musically, all of them. They were definitive of certain periods and the touchstones of certain periods. All in a very astonishing list, and it's not often that I so concur with everything on a list made by somebody somewhere who's not a dinosaur, but probably. But I do. It was a hell of a list.
Well, now that we've talked about the mega hits that were and almost were not, that only leaves for you to say
the only thing that I say, which is, let's fly this coop.
This has been Winging It, a presentation of Birds of a Feather on What the Flock Radio.